251 says, do you really think Petrucci sold more artist series than Vi? I know the person who knows the answer, and I asked him, and he said he didn't know. So, okay, so let's back up there. So here's what's interesting about this. So if you guys don't know, I interviewed John Petrucci a while back, and then of course on the second channel we put pod clips, and there was an interesting clip where he said the John Petrucci Music Man was the number one selling artist guitar in the world after the Les Paul. Now, where that data came from, I don't know, because I've done videos where, for instance, here's one I did. I did a video about the Wolfgang guitars, 5 Things You Don't Know video. And in the research of doing Eddie Van Halen guitars, let me tell you what I learned. No one seems to know enough. In other words, Music Man doesn't know what Peavey did. Peavey doesn't know what EVH now does, and EVH doesn't know what Kramer did. So trying to figure it out and asking these guys, they don't really seem to give you a lot of information. At least they wouldn't give me the information I needed. So trying to figure out how many of each one sold to kind of accumulate, how many guitars were sold by Eddie Van Halen was in the task I went down was impossible. I couldn't figure it out. Okay, and I put a lot of effort and work into it. I mean, it was months and months of this, trying to figure this information out. And one thing I think about is with Petrucci is I wonder if he was, because he obviously said it in the video, and he really, and I even came back at him, with a little like, are you really? And he's like, yeah, he was really convinced that his is the number one selling artist guitar in the world after the Les Paul. And in my mind, the argument would then be, maybe he means I wonder if there's a qualifier that we don't know. So here's what I mean by that. When I was a kid, I was into airplanes and into jets. Okay, I grew up in a town, Tucson, Arizona. I grew up in Tucson, Arizona, and if you're familiar with Tucson, Arizona, all you have to know is it's an Air Force town, right? Everybody lives off the base. The base is the income, basically, of the town, and so you see a lot of jets, and especially because there's a big graveyard of jets there. At least there was, and it's really cool. So the point is, there's weird ways that they would qualify things they would say to you. They would say, the C-5 Galaxy is the largest cargo plane in the free world. Because the Russian one was bigger. but that's not the free world. See how you could say thing and qualify it? John Petrucci's guitar, artist guitar, might be the number one most selling guitar from a single brand. Because think about this. There are artists like Eddie Van Halen. He was technically with 4 brands. You got EVH, Peavey, Music Man, and Kramer, technically, right? And I know technically he didn't have a signature guitar with Kramer, but still, he sold a lot of Kramers and it was associated with it, but you understand. So maybe Petrucci sold more than any one of those. I'm not trying to justify it. I'm trying to walk you down the logic. My thing I can tell you, here's what I can tell you. A few years back, and I don't know how long ago, so I'm going to say 7. I don't know. It could be 10 and it could be 5. It just definitely was before COVID. Ibanez had a party for the gym, and it was like the anniversary of the gym, and they sold like 1 million gyms. And I remember hearing that going, they sold 1 million gym guitars. I know that to some of you you're like, whoa, I can't believe that. And some of you are like, that's it. In the guitar world, like 1 million of anything is like a crazy number. Okay, it's just a crazy number of a product, of a SKU. And so they said they sold 1 million gems. So that's a lot of gems. So when Petrucci said that he sold more guitars basically than Steve Vai, I was a little skeptical like you guys are. And the funny part is the person who would know this is Larry DiMarzio. So I asked Larry, because here's why he would know this. Petrucci's guitars have DiMarzio pickups in it. and the gym has DiMarzio's in it. So he would know who bought more DiMarzios, Music Man or Ibanez. So I asked him one night, and he honestly said, he goes, I've never looked. I don't know. And he's like, and I told him what Petrucci said, and he's like, oh yeah, he goes, maybe they just told him that. That's what he said. He said, maybe Music Man just told him that, and he just, he doesn't know. He's just a guitar player, and they told him, yeah, yours is the best-selling guitar, like in the world. So a lot of you had said this in the comments in the video, which is like, you'd love to see the numbers. I don't know if you could actually figure out the numbers, because I've tried to figure out numbers with artist guitars, and it's really hard to figure out. But I do agree with every comment I saw in the video, so And the one thing, there's two things I should say that are very important. One, I do agree with every comment in that video. So if you read those comments, it's like, I'm like, yeah, disbelief, sounds weird. How does the John Mayer not compete now in that? A lot of people mention they see a lot more other brands' guitars, other artists' guitars more than his. All that I agree with 100%. The other thing I'm going to tell you is he was the nicest guy, and he seems about as honest and as nice as you can get. And so like I said, I once said this about Paul Reed Smith. I'm going to say it now about John Petrucci. I told you this, whatever crazy thing you think Paul Reed Smith says, my honest belief is that Paul believes it. Like he believes it. And I believe John Petrucci, whatever he said, I believe he believes it. So there you go. That's the answer. I don't think there's an agenda to tell us, to go kind of, gaslight us into thinking he's got the best-selling guitar. I believe he thinks it. I just don't know why. So Sunbase says Boss sold over 1 million Metal Zones. I know, isn't that crazy? A little fun Metal Zone fact for you guys. Until the Wazacraft, do you know the Metal Zone was unchanged? So I know you're like, well, wait a minute, the SD1. No, the SD1 was changed. I learned this from Boss themselves. The Boss guys explained to me once that the Metal Zone was the longest running Boss pedal in their history that went unchanged. So in other words, they didn't make any changes to the internal specification of the pedal. They didn't change anything about it in any way, where the SD1s actually have, there's versions of the innards being slightly different, and there's changes. And they said, so like until the Wazacraft, it had never been changed. It still hasn't been changed, by the way, but now there is a Wazacraft version. But it made it the longest running one. So you'd have to look at it. You guys have to Google it. I want to say like the Metal Zone was like 1992. So, and I think the Wazacraft was like 2017, 18. So think about those, from 2000, generally speaking, without looking it up on Google, I'm going to say my guess, if anyone wants to fact check me, 92 to 2017, the Metal Zone goes unchanged, and it's the longest running unchanged pedal, and they sold 1 million. Yeah, over 1 million of those. So it's a crazy pedal. Crazy. I remember the day I had one on layaway and couldn't wait. I thought it was the greatest thing I ever got in my entire life. In fact, to this day, I don't think there was ever a pedal that I ever bought, that when I got it, I had never felt like I had finally got the most pro piece of gear you could ever get in my life, is when I got the Metal Zone. I just remember it was $99 then. So I want to say 94. I got it probably 93, 94, maybe. So about a year after it came out, I think. So somewhere on there, early 90s. And put it on layaway, paid it off in 60 days, got it home, and thought this was the greatest thing I ever heard in my life. I thought I could finally play Metallica. I was like, this is great. If you enjoyed this podcast clip, you can watch the entire episode by clicking the link in the description or streaming it on iTunes, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. You can also join it live every week, Friday at 3 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and I hope to see you there. Until next time, know your gear.